Ever added padding and your box just exploded in size? Or tried adding space and nothing moved? That's CSS Box Model messing with you. And today we'll master it once and for all. So let's first understand what is CSS Box Model. Every HTML element is basically a box. Even text, pictures, icons, images, everything, right? This box is made up of 4 layers. So the very first layer is basically the content. What it is let's say if I click on this right here, right, which basically allows me to select individual component and it basically shows the properties of those HTML component, right? It basically shows how much space a given HTML element is taking up in the web page. If I click here and hover over this, as you can see, there is a blue space, which is the content. If I show you, if I do this right like that, this is basically the space that is the content is taking, right? There's a specific amount of space that content takes up in HTML element depending on how big it is. In this case, we have used an h1 tag, which is relatively big because it's a heading tag, right? And there's also a orange color. So that is what we call a margin. But I'm gonna change it to 0 because we don't want margin. So I'm gonna do margin 0 and padding 0. So by default, there is some sort of margin and padding that is given to your HTML element when you first make it without giving any CSS property. So I'm gonna change it to margin 0 and it'll basically take no space, right? I'm gonna explain what is margin and other stuff in a bit, so don't worry. First, let's understand the content. Content is basically the space content takes. So as you know, our h1 tag here is basically a block level element. I'm going to comment this out for a second because it's very hard to focus without this tag. So this right here, h1 is a block level element. That means it will basically take up the entire line to itself, right? So I'm going to do is give this h1 tag a class saying, let's say container. Select this in our style tag using .container, and let's say I'm going to do display inline block. Now if I do that, it will only take as much space that it should, which is the size of this text right here, right? But doing inline block is a really good thing because if I do inline, that still makes the same thing. It will only take up that much space. But if you just do display inline, what it does is basically you cannot set the individual value of the width and the height, right? If I do width, let's say width is 100 pixels, let's say 500 pixels, I'm going to change it to bigger number, sorry. And let's say the height is also 500 pixels. As you can see, it's still taking 171.63 and 36 pixels. That is the actual number of the pixels that the content is taking, which is the blue area shaded right here, right? But if I do inline block, this is another CSS property, okay? Like understand it very carefully. If I do inline block, as you can see, the blue region expanded quite a few margins because we have set the width to 500 pixels. As you can see, if I go down here, I cannot hover over it because I will just change it. That says h1 container 500 into 500, which is the amount of pixels that is taking on the web page. Okay, so that is one property of the inline block. So I'm going to set it to inline block. So the reason I explained it is because I'm going to use inline block to, set custom heights. So I'm going to do 200 pixels for now. I did this to make sure that I can explain the CSS box model more efficiently. Now I've set the h1 container, right, to width 200 pixels and height 200 pixels. So if I do that, as you can see, it will take that much space. Okay, that's it. Now the actual CSS box model. So we know the innermost part in the CSS box model is the content size, right? If I uncomment this and bring out our chart or our model, as you can see, the innermost part is the content size, which again we have set it to width 200 pixels. So this width right here is 200 pixels and height is 200 pixels, right? Now outside the content is the padding, another layer to the CSS box model. As I said before, CSS box model contains of 4 layers. All the HTML elements are made up of these 4 layers, right? Outside the actual content size is the padding. So I'm going to comment this part out and give this h1 tag a padding. If I do padding, let's say the padding is 30 pixels. So as you can see, the content moved a little bit downward, right? If I hover over this again, as you can see, there's a green border that is made up outside this h1 tag, right? That is the actual padding, right? That is the padding, which is 30 pixels on all 4 directions. Okay. Now, if I bring out this again, outside the padding is the border, right? I can give the border, so there is actually a specific syntax of writing the border. The first thing that you have to specify is the size of the border. In this case, I'm going to do 30 pixels because I've also made padding 30 pixels. So I'm going to give border also 30 pixels. It might look a little bit bad, but we are not going for design, but we are just going for learning, right? The second thing that you want to specify is you want a solid border or a dotted border. I'm going to do a solid border, right? So it'll basically create a solid border. I'm going to comment this image part so we can focus on this. It made a solid border. By default, the color is black. You can change it by giving the color right here, saying 30 pixels, solid, red, or any of your color. If I save this, it will change it to red, as you can see. But I'll keep it black for now because it looks more pleasing, right? That is border. You can also set the border to, let's say, dotted. It'll basically give a dotted border like this, but it looks kind of bad in my opinion, so I'm going to change it to solid like this. So this is solid, right? So this is the border. So border is the layer that is after padding, right? So the another and the last layer that we have to learn is the margin. So margin is the outermost layer in a CSS box model. I can also set the margin to, let's say, 30 pixel like this. And you see the margin is invisible. You cannot set the color of the margin, right? But if I hover over it, the orange part you see is the margin, right? That is the margin of this HTML element. So I'm going to repeat one more time. The innermost part in HTML element is the content, which is this right here. We have set it to width 200 pixels. So it is 200 pixels by 200 pixels. I can change it by using only that. It will basically change it to the actual space of the text, but to make it look more visible, I'm going to set it to 200 pixels wide and 200 pixels of the height. Now, after content is the padding, the green border you see right here, but it's not border, it's padding, which is inside border but outside the content. So if you want to give some space that is outside content but is still inside the border, you give padding. Don't worry, I'm gonna actually make sure you understand it by using a real life application, which I'm gonna do at the end of the video. So stay tuned for that. Don't go anywhere from the video. And if you're enjoying the video so far and you're understanding the CSS box model, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe, please. So outside padding is border. Okay, so if you want to give border to HTML element, you give the border property in the CSS. And after border is the margin. So margin is used when you want to separate two different HTML elements. Okay, if I give, let's say if I copy these two like this, as you can see, there are two boxes now, but I can give a margin. So another way of giving margin and padding is by giving the specific margin and padding, right? If I want to give margin in right direction, right, I can give margin right. Then give margin right like this, and let's say 20 pixels. It'll basically set margin on right side to 20 pixels. If I keep increasing it, it will increase. As you can see, I gave 100 pixels, it increased by 100 pixels like this. I can also give a margin left like this to 100, let's say 50 pixels. it will basically set the margin on the left on 50 pixels. I can also set margin on top, saying 100 pixels. It will basically set margin on top, and also I can do on bottom like this, but it will kind of makes no sense of doing bottom because there's nothing on the bottom anyways, right? That's margin. Now another thing that you can do is give padding the same thing. If I do padding left, I can give it, let's say 100 pixels. It'll basically set margin on padding on left side to be 100 pixels. I can also give it padding right, let's say 100 pixels again. It will basically set padding to right side to 100 pixels. I'm going to set padding top to 100 pixels as well. As you can see, padding on top on 100 pixels. I can also set padding bottom to 100 pixels, and just like that it will set the padding on bottom on 100 pixels. So that is all about CSS Box Model. So to show you a real life example of CSS Box Model, what I'm going to do is show you to make an actual modern style button, right? What I'm going to do is inside body, I'm going to make a button that says, let's say button, because let's say, but right now it looks very bad because it's a default button, right? I'm going to set the class to, let's say, container again, same name. I'm going to call this container like this. Okay, I selected this button in my CSS style tag. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the font size to a visible size, let's say 50 pixels. As you can see, I'm going to capitalize the B to make it look more cleaner. So the font size is 50 pixels. So we know that padding is the space that is between border and the content, right? So for the padding, I want, let's say 25 pixels on left and right and 30 pixels on top and bottom. What I'm going to do is padding left. I'm going to do 20 pixels. And padding right, I'm going to do 20 pixels as well. So there's 20 pixels right there. Padding top is, let's say, 30 pixels. And padding bottom is 30 pixels. As you can see right there, it looks more cleaner. So this is the actual application of padding, okay? I'm also going to set a margin of 30 pixels to make sure it comes a little bit down instead of having just, glued to top left corner of the screen. As you can see, giving margin, it basically set 30 pixel margin on all four directions like that. Now for the styling, right? So for the styling, what I'm going to do is set the color of background. So I'm going to do a background color. I'm going to set it to, let's say, this button, floral, I guess. Looks clean, as you can see, but the text color, which is black, doesn't look appetizing, which is I think the wrong way to put it, but still I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna set it to white. So I set the text color to white. So by default it has a small border, so I'm gonna set the border to none because I don't want any border. I'm gonna set the border property to none, which will basically erase this border, as you can see right there. And what I'm going to do is basically set the border radius, right? So border radius is basically the corners of the border. So if I give a border radius, it will basically set the corner values of the border. So it looks more cleaner, as you can see. It looks more cleaner and modern, right? I'm going to actually change I'm going to change this to, let's say, 25 pixels, and this 25 pixels, it looks more cleaner, as you can see. Now that is the modern style button. So yeah, that's it. That is CSS Box Model. So that's it for today's video, guys. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also check out coding.com. Link will be in the video description. And I'll see you guys in another video. Bye-bye.